Thank you, everybody. My pleasure to be with you today. As mentioned, we're listed on both ASX and NASDAQ. So under ASX, ticker code is IMC, and NASDAQ IMRN. I'll just flick through the safe harbor statement. As mentioned, we're focused on oral immunotherapeutics for gut-mediated diseases, focused specifically on infectious diseases, and we have two commercially available products, Travelan and Protectant. So we're a revenue-generating company. Travelan is our flagship product, and it's sold for the prevention and relief of travelers' diarrhea. And with international travel increasing at a very strong rate since the pandemic has past its peak, we're seeing very strong growth there. And you can see at the bottom there that we did $3.6 million. So we're a relatively small biotech company with a market cap of Australian dollars around $20 million with a strong balance sheet. So as at December, we had $15.2 million in cash. And apart from the two commercial products, Travelan and Protectant, we also, as mentioned in the opening, we have three therapeutic candidates in 4 clinical programs, and we're relatively advanced in 2 of those. So Travelan just completed a phase 2 controlled human infection model study, as did Camp ETEC. We're collaborating with the US Department of Defense in both of those programs, notably the Navy, and we have a strong period of milestones coming up for each of these. So for Travelan phase 2 study, we have more data coming out in July. The Camp ETEC phase 2 top-line data will be out in August, and very exciting for us. The other third therapeutic program, IMM 529 for Clostridioides difficile, will be filing pre-IND with the US Food and Drug Administration at the end of this month. We also have a phase 4 program. We market Travelan in the US market as a dietary supplement, and the Uniformed Services University is running a very large trial in 866 subjects, which are active US and UK military personnel traveling to high-risk regions. And the reason that the Department of Defense are working with us is that there is no FDA-approved drug for the prevention of travelers' diarrhea. And this is a very big problem for not only people traveling on holiday, whether it's to Australians traveling to Bali or Americans traveling to Mexico, the military travel places where diarrhea stops warfighters from being effective in the field. And so for that reason, the Department of Defense has funded much of our preclinical research and our phase 2 studies, both of these that we've just completed. And looking forward to continued growth of Travelan in the market. So you can see they're 154% up on last year, 3.6 million in the 9 months to March, and last year we were up 136% as well. So we can look forward to more of that. Let me just tell you a little bit about the technology platform. So how do we produce these polyclonal antibodies? And it's quite unique, really. We develop specific vaccines for targeted pathogens. And in the case of Travelan, that's 13 different types of enterotoxigenic E. coli, which causes around 70% of travelers' diarrhea. And we don't give those vaccines to humans. We actually vaccinate pregnant cows. And in response to those injections, the cows produce the polyclonal antibodies. And those antibodies are expressed in colostrum that we collect and turn into a drug product. So if I just click through, you can see the stages here of how it works. Now, those polyclonal antibodies, when you take them, they neutralize the toxin at its source and clear it. So unlike antibiotics, which kill pathogens and can cause antimicrobial resistance, that is not the case for Travelan. So we essentially get all the benefits of colostrum, and you'd be familiar with this. That's the first milk of mammals. And in addition to that, we get these polyclonal antibodies, which are targeted to those specific pathogens. And each of our products uses this technology. The key difference between each product is the vaccine that we develop for those targeted pathogens that we give to the pregnant cow. I got some diagrams here which are quite interesting. They show at a very minute level how Travelan works. So you can see in the first diagram here how bacteria attach to the gut wall and infect. And here's with Travelan. So you can see these the bacteria have been grouped together and they're cleared from the system. So neutralizes the toxins and clears it from the gut, and it works very, very effectively. So effectively, in fact, that in an earlier phase 2 study, we showed up to 90.9% effectiveness in preventing travelers' diarrhea. Let's just have a look at the market opportunities. This is $1 billion market, and it varies by product. So IMM 529 for Clostridioides difficile, that's a $1.7 billion market, mostly at the moment antibiotics, but they have problems, especially in Clostridioides difficile, because it reoccurs. You get antibiotics, you feel better for a short time, and you get it back again. So there's a high unmet need for a non-antibiotic treatment for Clostridioides difficile, and we believe we can be one of those. And in the case of Travelan, for the travelers' diarrhea market, if we just look at the US and European markets alone, looking at a conservative 15% penetration into that market of those people that seek advice from healthcare practitioners, you're talking $83 million in the US market and $50 million in Europe. And you'll recall that I mentioned that we're doing $3.6 million, which is mostly in the Australian market. So there's a lot of growth potential coming. And we have hired a very seasoned executive as our Chief Commercial Officer, ex-GlaxoSmithKline and Procter & Gamble, and he's leading the charge, taking our success in Australia to new markets. So we have launched in Canada as well as the US market, and I encourage all of you to have a look for this product in your store. So if you're in Canada, we've launched recently on well.ca and Rexall, also recently in Sobeys, and soon in some of the major pharmaceutical pharmacy chains within Canada. And in the US market, we launched in the middle of last year on Amazon.com and recently on Walmart.com, and growth is taking off, so to speak. And in Australia, we're in every pharmacy store. Anywhere you go, you will find the product, and it's used by people when they travel to Bali and Fiji and places like that. And how big a problem is it? You can see here, quoted from the US Centers for Disease Control, you can expect 30 to 70% of travellers to these high-risk regions to get traveller's diarrhea. And none of us really want to get that while we're on holiday. And yes, there are products you can take like Imodium to stop bowel movements after you get traveller's diarrhea, and rehydration salts that can assist you to get better. But wouldn't it be better if you could prevent it in the first place? And Travelan offers you the opportunity to do just that. Let's have a look at sales now. This graph is interesting. You'll see the in FY, so that's financial year 2021. Our financial year ends in June. Big impact of COVID, or the pandemic, if you like. People weren't traveling, and there was no need, I guess, for people to purchase this product. But with the pandemic subsiding and peak having passed, you can see travel's taken off dramatically, as has our sales. In fact, at an ever-increasing rate there. Most of our sales, as I mentioned, is coming from Australia. And at March 2024 year-to-date, 9 months to March, of that $3.6 million in sales, $2.8 million was from Australia. You can see the US market is starting to become significant as well. And we'll be looking for continued growth, especially in the US and Canadian markets in the coming financial year. I mentioned that we'd recently completed a phase 2 study on Travelan. That's a controlled human infection model study, and that was in 60 healthy subjects which volunteer to be infected by E. coli. And so we applaud these people. This is common in infectious disease studies, similar to what was done in COVID vaccine studies. Healthy volunteers volunteer to get infected to show whether the active drug versus a placebo in a randomized controlled trial can prevent someone being infected. And so we did that for Travelan, and we had a positive outcome. We showed 36.4% protective efficacy, which was good, but not as good as the previous study that we did, showing up to 90.9%. Difference between the two studies is this recent one was once a day dosing, and the previous study, the auto study, was 3 times daily dosing, which is the rate at which the product's dosed as it's used currently on the market. But our collaborators in the US Department of Defense were most interested in these other secondary endpoints. They said to us that they can handle people getting mild to moderate diarrhea when they're out in the field, but when you get severe diarrhea, people end up on IV fluids, they need rescue antibiotics and the like. That's a real problem because they simply don't have the resources to be able to deal with that. And in this study, we showed up to 66.7% protective efficacy against severe diarrhea, which was an excellent result, and a statistically significant 83.3% reduction in the number of subjects requiring early antibiotic treatment. And remarkably, 100% of the subjects that ended up on IV fluids were all in the placebo group and none in the Travelan group. And we also had a reduction in adverse side effects of 55.6%. So very, very strong secondary endpoints, which impressed our collaborators in the US Department of Defense. On the back of this data, we are working to get further data that we'll release in July, as I mentioned before. The last follow-ups have been done, and there'll be additional data coming through. We'll get the final clinical study report in around August or September, and arrange end of phase 2 meeting with the US Food and Drug Administration with a view to getting approval for a protocol to proceed to phase 3. So we're moving from a phase 2 into phase 3 stage. So the last stage, if you like, before regulatory approval of the product in the US market. I mentioned before that we'd been working with the Department of Defense on a strong preclinical and clinical program, and for your reference here is, not all, but many of the studies, those that have been published, showing very, very strong scientific research behind our Travelan product, and also IMM 529 for Clostridioides difficile. To note, and I won't go through all of these, but we did a study in Shigella in monkeys that showed 75% protective efficacy, and this is very important in that Shigella, unlike E. coli for Travelos diarrhea, has much more significant side effects, and in the case of monkeys in the study, including death. So we prevented death of monkeys in the trial 75% of the time. So that was an excellent result. And we also had markers showing why that was the case. So there's a strong body of evidence behind Travelan, not only in E. coli for Travelos diarrhea, but also in Shigella. In some of the earlier studies we did with the US Armed Forces, AFRAMS, showed broad activity against 180 different pathogens that have been isolated from US Army personnel in their model. So very, very strong, broad protective profile for Travelan in Travelos diarrhea. And IMM 529, I don't have a slide deck, so I don't have time for it today, but we have the world's first triple mechanism of action product here for Clostridioides difficile. It's not an antibiotic, It's an oral product, and it could be a game changer for Clostridium difficile. As I mentioned before, we're about to file pre-IND with the FDA at the end of this month. So an exciting time, many milestones coming up, not just that one in June for IMM 529, but milestones for Travelan, IMM 124E, and Camp ETEC in July and August. So I might just pause there and open up for any questions that you may have.
Yes, so a few questions here. The first one from Grace. He's asking, is Travelan a prophylactic agent or just to manage the diarrhea when the occasion arises? So, and how long does it have to be in order to get medical opinion?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So prophylactic means a big word, if you like, for those that aren't technical, for prevention. So correct. Travelan is a prophylactic product taken before you travel. Typically, you would take it 2 days before you travel and with each meal while you are traveling for prevention of traveler's diarrhea. We also have some clinical evidence that shows that it assists in the recovery as well, but the primary aim of this particular product is preventing you from getting it in the first place. So prophylactic treatment.
Great. And the question from ZYA here, is there any other new markets that you want to enter potentially, like in Asia, like Japan or China, in terms of that?
Yeah, so we're looking at the moment of moving into the European market, and we have initiated some discussions to enter into the Asian markets, not Japan per se, but in Southeast Asian markets, yes.
Yes, and
we are, of course, open to Japan and China. So if anyone's from Japan or China that has an interest, then my contact details are here. Please contact me.
For sure. And another question from Jasmine here. He's asking, you have some cash on hand, probably about 15 million Australian dollars. Will you consider doing any, or the need of doing any ways of capital anytime soon?
Not soon per se, but we're in the process of seeking additional grant funding. I mentioned we're moving from phase 2 into phase 3 for Travelan, and that will require significant funding to do that. And we also are filing pre-IND with the FDA for IMM 529 for Clostridium difficile. We plan to start a phase 2 trial next year in that, which will also require funding. So probably around the middle of next year, depending on how much grant funding we get, we would be in a position where we may need additional funding.
Good. The questions are asking, what are your products' competitive advantages? Like, are they unique in the market, or what other?
Yeah, so I think your first participant asked the question about is it a prophylactic? That is the key difference. So the products at the moment, it's a big market, but it's dominated by products which are used after you get traveler's diarrhea. So products like Imodium or GastroStop in Australia, which is generic loperamide, stopping bowel movements, oral rehydration salts, things like that to help you recover. Our unique difference is that we can prevent traveler's diarrhea. So it is unique in that sense, and we need to make people aware of that fact, and that's what we're starting to do in our sales and marketing efforts.
Great. One last question here from Lexi Lynn is asking, is what are the potential catalysts in the next 12 months for your company?
Yeah, so I think we'll report our June quarterly sales results in around middle of July, and you can expect continued strong growth. We've already had a record year, so I mentioned we've done in 9 months 3.6 million in sales. Pre-pandemic, at its peak, it was a $2.5 million product, and so we've already exceeded that in the 9 months of this year, and we should end up with a much higher figure than that. So good sales results will be the first catalyst, but the others are those clinical milestones I mentioned. So we have pre-IND filing in June for IMM 529. We have additional top-line data for Travelan, IMM124E phase 2 trial. In August, we'll have top-line phase 2 trial data for Camp ETEC as well. So a lot of clinical milestones as well coming up, which is quite exciting for us.
Great to hear. So thank you, Stephen, for your time here today.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time, everybody. And my contact details are here. Feel free to contact me. I'd love to speak to you. Cheers for now.
Thank you.